There have been 3 players to record 60 or more sacks since 2020. TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, and Cincinnati's Trey Hendrickson. Unfortunately for the Eagles, he lines up exclusively against left tackles, and backup Fred Johnson is currently allowing the highest pressure rate among all qualifying tackles via PFF. Unlike last week, where they could live with Johnson against Burns for much of the game, they must help Fred Johnson. But how? The most obvious way is to use a variety of chips or double teams, but let's be honest, that's boring analysis. So, how else do teams try to slow down great edge rushers? Check out this play from week 7. On this play, the Browns are running dart, which is a gap scheme concept. They use a deuce block, which is a double team by the play side offensive tackle and guard on the play side defensive tackle that is working up to the backside linebacker. Here they have the right tackle pulled to kick out the defensive end. What they are trying to do is create a clear gap for the running back to hit just outside of the offensive tackle. When the defensive end sees the offensive tackle down block, he must chase the tackle's hip and condense the space between him and the offensive line. Ideally, he could put a hand on the tackle's hip, but here Hendrickson does a great job to constrict the gap and the ball carrier trips running through traffic. Notice what happens here when the defensive end isn't able to close the space between the down block and kickout. There are several issues with the defense on this play, but because the defensive end isn't quick enough closing the space, they leave open a horizontal seam so big that even Rich Eisen might be able to... never mind. What's more important though is what happens when the defensive end is more worried about the pass and gets too far up the field. Notice how the end getting upfield creates a big vertical seam that the running back can exploit. So that's the key here. Make the star defensive end decide. Is he going to honor the run and sacrifice pass rush efficiency? Or is he going to get upfield and dare the offense to exploit the vertical seam he's giving you? Check out this play. This isn't Hendrickson, but the same principle applies, only this time the Browns are passing, and by the time the defender recognizes it's a pass, there's already a pulling guard in his face. For what it's worth, the Eagles used this thought process in week 7, as we see here. If it's a real issue, you could have the back stay in to help double team as well. Let's take it a step further and look back to week 1. The Eagles are again going to use a gap scheme play action protection plan, but to make the read more difficult for the edge defender, they had the tight end check and release instead of bypassing the defender immediately. Now he has no momentum to get into his pass rush when the guard pulls, and he's essentially been double teamed without having to take a guy out of the route. This pairs well with the fact that the Eagles often have their tight end bluff like he's going to block the edge defender before releasing up to the second level. That helps distract and prevent the end from closing down the space like we saw in the previous clips. Now, you could use the same principle with split zone runs. You can see how the split flow action between the offensive tackle blocking away and the tight end slicing back across the formation puts the defensive end in a similar predicament. The only difference is, you probably don't want your tight end blocking Trey Hendrickson, and it also takes a receiver out of the route. But what you could do is pair that split flow action with a play fake and leak the tight end out to the flat. Even if this throw doesn't get made, the run action often gives the quarterback enough space to get around the edge, especially if that edge starts getting aggressive trying to close the space between the tackle. On all the plays we looked at previously, the edge needed to close the space inside, but on these next set of plays, we're going to see the offense run plays that take advantage of that edge defender crashing inside. We see the edge defender do a really good job to tighten down and even touches the offensive tackle, but the Ravens are running split zone bluff and have the tight end bypass the defensive end as he lead blocks for the quarterback around the edge. This has also been a play the Eagles have used in the past, though that frequency has dropped since Jalen got his payday. Here's another variation where the Eagles run counter bash, which is essentially an inverted read option play with the running back taking the ball to the edge or the quarterback keeping and executing the gap scheme run up the middle. The point is, notice how the defensive end sees the tackle pull and has to close space inside while the back races to the sideline. All of these designs are intended to confuse and slow down a star player. On one play, when he's left unblocked, he might need to close space on the down block inside because it's a run. On the next play, the offense could be taking advantage of that setup by running a play designed to hit outside. And then the next play could be a play action pass. So essentially, if you want to slow down a star edge rusher, don't be afraid to leave them unblocked and confuse the shit out of them. And these are just a handful of ways in which the Eagles could do that. Think of other plays like screen plays and jet sweeps where the defensive end oftentimes is unblocked. When the Eagles play the Bengals, make sure you pay attention to what they're doing with Trey Hendrickson.